Warning, this podcast contains violence, sexuality, gore, and other horrible and disturbing things. Listener discretion is advised. Also, the hosts of this venture are ignorant dipshits, so please do not take anything they say as fact. And enjoy the show.
Now, are you sitting comfortably? Good. Then we'll begin.
Today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be.
The atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand.
It is our basic human right to be fucked up.
A second plane now has crashed into the other tower of the World Trade Center.
Put chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The defendant shall be incarcerated for the rest of her natural life with no possibility of parole.
You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men.
We were somewhere around Barstow, on the edge of the desert, when the drugs began to take hold.
Occultae Veritatis. This is Occultae Veritatis with Ood, Leon, and Sage, and this episode, our guest Bartlett, to help us explain what ECT is.
Tonight's show all about electroconvulsive therapy, shock treatment you may have heard of. But before we get into the zzzt, let's get on some poison.
So, what's your poison?
It says it was established in 1934, so this beer has some legacy, apparently.
Legacy.
I like it.
Trailer Park.
I like it.
Oh, I don't like it, but I'll drink it. It's got like a fishy aftertaste. What is that?
It's poverty. And intergenerational violence.
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
Maybe I like it more the second sip. It was like a rush of the sea.
Now that you know it tastes like poverty.
No, I'm dehydrated badly because I had to go to the hospital today and get an abdominal CT scan. So I had to drink 1.5 liters of laxative, which just like purged my body of all its water. And exciting news, I haven't shit yet.
Oh, boy.
So if I suddenly disappear, it's because I am about to or have shit myself.
There may be a moment mid-sentence where Leon just goes...
Leon's gone.
Yeah,
Leon's driving me home, so I hope he doesn't shit himself.
Yeah.
Did you bring extra pants, my friend?
No, I didn't.
Oh, crap.
That's not how I roll.
Okay. You just like to live dangerously?
I'll just give you mine. I'll go home with no pants.
Sounds good.
Thanks, Bartlett.
So the name Lucky Extra implies there was a Lucky beer before, and then they did something
Lucky
to
Lager, and they added some extra liquor.
Yeah,
Oh.
They added extra alcohol. It's like the what is it? The Black Bull? Was Black Bear? Is that what I drank in high school? I don't remember.
Maybe. Our second guest for the next episode is in studio, Mr. Robot behind me. What do you think?
It smells like a trailer park, and it tastes like Manitoba.
Oh, damn.
Okay, very definitive.
I'm going to rate it 17 Jim Leahy's out of 19 Trevor and Corey's.
Oh, damn. Well, I'm boring with my rating, so I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It'll do the job. It's fine.
It'll get the job done.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could drink this. I mean, this is the second cheapest beer?
The cheapest beer.
No, it's the cheapest beer with the most alcohol among all the cheapest beers.
Oh, okay, so the two cross sections.
This will get you drunker faster than anything else in the LB.
You know what? This is not bad at all. I'm going to give this cheap-ass beer a 6 out of 10.
Nice.
Attaboy.
Does it technically make it the perfect beer?
It might.
I think
it might
so.
make it the
might,
perfect beer.
Because it's not too terrible to not be drinkable, and it will fuck you up in a jiffy.
In a jiffy.
That's really all you want.
Pip, pip.
One person that would say...
Electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT, is often called a treatment of last resort for patients who haven't had success with drug therapies, who have life-threatening psychiatric conditions, or who are suffering a catatonic state. ECT induces a brief seizure in a patient which resets the brain functions associated with some psychiatric disorders.
It's typically indicated for treatment-resistant psychiatric conditions, most commonly mood disorders or depression, but there are multiple types of depression, so it can also be used to treat bipolar depression.
The majority of ECT treatments are managed like outpatient procedures, and the patient is given general anesthesia.
When the patient's asleep, the stimulus is delivered, the seizure is monitored, they'll have just one seizure.
An electrical current is given to the brain, low enough not to harm the patient, but high enough to trigger a seizure. The treatment team can even touch the patient.
The thing that concerns patients the most is that they know that they will be having a seizure. They're concerned about what may be happening while they're either asleep or while they're having that seizure. And thanks to the anesthetic, it's very hard to tell. In fact, the only way you can truly tell if they're having a seizure or not is to kind of monitor the motor activity and then monitor the EEG activity.
The patient awakens soon after and is monitored for a short while like any patient who has undergone general anesthesia. Within a half hour, they'll be discharged.
Okay, so we have done this type of episode a couple times in the past where we've talked about mental illness, and some of our sexy questions have turned into mental illness, and we're going to do sexy questions at the end of the episode.
Cool.
Just in case I shit myself before then. So today we're talking about electroconvulsive therapy treatment, which is the process of running volts of electricity across someone's brain, causing them to have a seizure, which can in some way affect their mood. And it sounds crazy. It's been thought of crazy. You may have seen One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It's been demonized. I've had 20 treatments over the course of the last 4 years, and I'm still doing okay.
You are.
So to introduce the topic, I've put together a dramatic reading.
Oh, I'm fine. I love dramatic reading.
And this is in the form of the listener being a new patient on the psych ward. Your doctors have tried many different treatments. You've been on every drug. You're not responding to anything. You're bipolar, but you're just experiencing the worst mood you've ever had before, and they can't seem to pull you out of it, even on lithium and SSRIs and anything. Nothing's pulling you out of this depression.
Right.
So the last resort is ECT, what we call riding the lightning. This is called Riding the Lightning by Leon Filger. It's midnight on the psych ward. Monday has just become Tuesday, and you're awake in your hospital bed. The saline lock installed in your right arm last night is itching and aching. Despite a heavy dose of sedatives, you can't sleep. You're not surprised. At 8 a.m., you ride the lightning. Later, at 6 a.m., before other patients are awake, you saunter down the hall to the nursing station to have your vitals taken. 15 minutes later, you're in the elevator, headed down one floor to the electroconvulsive therapy suite. The ECT suite is a large, sterile room with a modest nursing station in the middle and 8 surgical beds lining 3 walls. A tired but friendly registered nurse shows you to your bed, bed number 3. Waiting for you on the bed are a hospital gown, a house coat, and a warm flannel blanket. The nurse draws the curtain, and you change into the gown and house coat, then lay back on the uncomfortable bed, covering yourself with the warm blanket. Over the next 15 minutes, 2 other patients arrive. Outpatients, dressed in street clothes. They are assigned beds 1 and 2. There are only 3 patients on Electric Avenue this morning. Before 7 a.m., the respiratory therapist and ECT nurse arrive. An IV is started, and the respiratory therapist begins drawing up multiple syringes of various drugs, including propofol, the rapid-acting sedative, and remifentanil, a potent, short-acting synthetic opioid analgesic. Soon, a handful of medicine and nursing students arrive and begin to look nervous. At 7:30, the psychiatrist and anesthesiologist arrive. They introduce themselves, review your chart, and explain what riding the lightning is all about, although they don't use that terminology. At 8 a.m., the patient in bed number 1 is hooked up to the Mecta Spectrum 4000N ECT device, and 150 volts of electricity is run through her brain for less than half a second, triggering a seizure that will last up to 2 minutes. During this time, her diaphragm will be paralyzed, and the respiratory therapist may have to manually ventilate her. You can't hear her thrashing on the other side of the curtain. The propofol has paralyzed her body. You try to sleep. Finally, it's your turn. The respiratory therapist takes his place at the head of your bed and places a mask over your face. Breathing deeply, your lungs soon fill with 100% oxygen. The anesthesiologist pushes the remifentanil and asks if you can feel it. You try to speak, but you can only mumble as the ecstasy washes over you and you touch the face of God. Then propofol, the divine milk, burns up your arm. You're told to take a deep breath, but are unable, and quickly disappear into the void. An instant later, it's been more than 40 minutes, you open your eyes and struggle for a moment to figure out what species you are. Then the headache and nausea show up, and the merciful nurse sends some of the analgesic Toradol and ondansetron, a powerful anti-nauseant, into your IV. You close your eyes and sleep. Later that day, the pocket in the back of your brain that holds your depression is a little bit less full. Welcome to the lightning.
Damn, I got chills, buddy.
Okay, so...
I don't think I'm going to be super funny this episode.
That's fine. It lightens up, actually.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Because, like, that was pretty intense. Like, I am feeling quite...
That's a happy story.
That was pretty intense for me.
Okay, so where did ECT start? And I'm going to give sort of the layman's account of how it's happened, and then I'll actually go into the piece of paper here where I wrote down true things. Some time ago, not so long ago, but some time before that, some doctors, psychiatrists, had observed that patients with depression who had a comorbidity of epilepsy found that their depression was quite lessened after a grand mal seizure. Okay, so the way it works, is, as far as it's been explained to me, is that psychiatrists or doctors were observing psych patients, people with bipolar, which hadn't been called bipolar at the time, but various personality and major mood disorders. And they studied patients who had a comorbidity of epilepsy. And they noted that after an epileptic had a grand mal seizure, their depression was diminished.
Interesting.
And they found that this was a constant, that in almost every case of a depressed person having a seizure, they woke up feeling better.
Interesting.
And so they started experimenting with various really draconian things to force someone to have a seizure, and one of them was electricity. And at the time, they had no idea what voltage or amperage was appropriate, so they would just literally stick leads through screws into your skull and electrocute you. And sometimes you would die, and sometimes you wouldn't. And when you wouldn't die, oftentimes it worked.
Does that ever have anything to do with like how Frankenstein, or I guess Frankenstein's monster, was portrayed with bolts in his neck?
I imagine that's the same sort of thing. So in reality, ECT procedure was first conducted in 1938, and its only current use of the form of shock therapy in psychiatry. It's often used with informed consent. So in a lot of places, not Canada, but a lot of places you can't do it without a sane person saying you can do it. You can't commit someone who's not competent to the procedure. And I remember, like, the last time I was sick, I had said, don't give me ECT regardless. Like, I'll never, ever do that.
Yeah.
And then got to that point where I was so desperate that I did. And I still do have some regrets about doing it because my short-term memories never recovered.
Yeah.
But it worked as far as my mood. Like, I mean, Sage, you visited me. You saw how bad I was.
Yeah, you were no good.
No good. But after 12 treatments, they let me out of the hospital. And then the last of the 20 over the preceding couple of years, and I felt pretty good ever since. And I think I would probably do it again if it got to that point.
Right. Like, I think in your case, for sure, the benefits outweighed the shittiness of it. Yeah, your short-term memory is awful.
Yeah, it is.
But you're a lot happier.
I'm much happier. And it's one. The other thing is, there's something to be said about remifentanil. And yeah, people ask, how could I become addicted to opioids? When I had said in my dramatic reading, when I talked about the ecstasy washing over me and touching the face of God, that's barely hyperbole. I mean, I even found toward the end, I was telling them, let the remifentanil run for a bit before you push the propofol, because I was saying the propofol is burning my arm, but if you let the Remi run for a bit, it hurts less.
Interesting.
Now, did it? Probably. Is that why I wanted it? No, because I wanted an extra second of remifentanil, because that's the most incredible feeling in the world. So you look at people getting hooked on fentanyl, I get it.
Yeah.
I would too. If I had an unlimited supply of remifentanil, I would inject myself all the time because it feels that good.
I mean, it must, because you see people get addicted to opioids that have no history of drug use. You know, they get hurt at work, they get prescribed something, and, you know, housewives and blue-collar workers and people that never had an association with drugs in their lives suddenly become hooked enough that when the prescription runs out, they will have to go to heroin to fall back. So it must be a strong addiction and a wonderful feeling.
Right. So we talk about the plus sides and the negative sides to ECT. I'm just going to go over a little bit of the negative sides, and then we'll move on to something a bit more cheerful. So aside from effects in the brain, The general physical risks of ECT are similar to those of brief anesthesia. The U.S. Surgeon General's report says that there are no absolute health contraindications to its use. Immediately following treatment, the most common adverse effects are confusion and memory loss, and it must be used very cautiously in people with epilepsy or other neurological disorders because by its nature it provokes small tonic-clonic seizures, and so would not likely give a person whose epilepsy is not well controlled. Some patients experience muscle soreness, that was me included. This is due to the muscle relaxants that are given during the procedure and rarely due to the actual muscle activity. ECT, especially when combined with deep sleep therapy, may lead to brain damage if administered in such a way that it would lead to apoxia.
Oh my God.
What's apoxia?
It's lack of oxygen getting to your brain.
Oh, jeez.
There's two types of ECT that are done. There's unilateral and bilateral. And unilateral is where both probes, positive and negative probe, are squished on one side of your head. And so the electricity goes in through one, kind of creeps around the right side of your brain, which is they don't never do it left unilateral. It's always right unilateral. And it affects part of the brain and can get some results, but it's not likely to cause really bad cognitive problems because you don't do the whole brain.
Okay.
What's usually done, though, is bilateral, where it's one on each side and the electricity goes in one end and out the other, and it fries everything it goes through. That would be for really sick patients who haven't responded to unilateral. I've never done bilateral. I've never, fortunately, been that bad. I responded really well to unilateral the first time and always have since then.
Perfect.
So there'd be more damage with the bilateral, but it's more effective.
10 times more effective.
Holy crap!
So it's, I mean, sometimes they'll start everyone off with a unilateral to see what happens,
which is fair.
And if they get no results, then they're just going to crank it up to the full bilateral. But
which is what you see on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
And okay, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Let's talk about that. And I'm glad you brought it up because there's an entire story to be had here. In China, in 1998, was the last country on Earth to use ECT without anesthetic.
They used it without anesthetic?
So did we.
Holy fuck, you guys!
So did everyone.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
and that's without the paralyzing agent either.
Yeah, and so the biggest problem was like breaks and dislocations of the long bones.
Jesus.
Elbows, shoulders, hips, knees.
Christ.
Just because the contraction of the muscles were so severe that they would pull your joints apart.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
And your muscles are capable of breaking your own bones, right?
Absolutely.
Christ.
Draconian is right.
But, I mean, it was every modern medical science came from a barbaric medical science.
Right. You're right.
You know, like no good drug we had today didn't get tested on a bunny.
Yeah.
As shitty as that is, like,
thank you, bunnies.
If a lot of people hadn't been tortured to fuck on these machines 100 years ago, I'd still be in the hospital.
Yeah.
So,
and the scary part of medical history is we actually got a lot of our advancements from the Nazi experiments of World War II.
Which Leon is doing an episode on. I demand it.
Yeah. So, right, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which I've never seen intentionally, but I've seen screenshots from, looks terrifying.
The book is good.
Yeah, we don't do that anymore, but we did. That's very real. It's used not often in schizophrenia, which I believe was the theme in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
But major depressive disorder, bipolar, are the two big ones that are treated with it. And it's not often used alone. It's often used with an adjunct like lithium, because lithium is the big gun that treats all bipolar disorder. But and I'm on it. It's also very toxic. My hair is gray because of 8 years of lithium therapy.
Your hair is distinguished.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's
My
silvery.
my hair is silvery.
He is a future silver fox.
No, he's a silver fox right now.
Yeah. No, and it'll poison your organs over time, but it'll save your life. So, am I going to lose 5-10 years because of this poison I'm taking every day? Maybe, but they're going to be a good.
That's better than killing yourself now.
You're losing them on the back end.
Exactly. Yeah. No one needs those anyway. Yeah. So we do things a lot better. It's in the 70s as a result of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It got a bad rap, and a lot of people stopped doing it. And the electronics companies that made these machines, including Saskatoon's own Mecta Spectrum 5000M ECT device.
Oh, damn. Shout out.
Stopped being profitable because no one wanted to buy them. And then it's only been in the last 10 years that there's been sort of an uptick. And now within the last 3 years, because of the ketamine study done at the University of Saskatchewan, where we realized that using ketamine instead of propofol can greatly increase the rates of success with it. So much to the point that they stopped the study early. The study was set to go on for 5 years. Yeah. After 2.5 years, they said, we quit. Let's implement this.
Yeah.
Because the results were so strikingly positive.
I get the bias though, because there's a bunch of stupid guys like me out there that didn't know anything about this and just thought it was some barbaric thing that
they did back in the day.
Yeah, and that it would like you only use it with severe people that have like zero quality of life, and it damaged them irreparably, and like stuff like that.
So, question to you, Bartlett.
Yeah.
Prior to this delightful dramatic reading, what did you know about ECT? In fact, I want to know what you know about ECT, so I can confirm or debunk whatever you know.
What I do know is that it has been used for a long time. I spent time in psychiatric wards and was surrounded by some patients who went through ECT treatment. This was mid-2000s. But beyond that, I didn't know anything.
Me neither.
I knew what was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But the only other barbaric thing, and I'm sure we can touch on this in a bit, but is the prefrontal lobotomies.
Oh, yes. There's going to be an episode on that.
The history from that.
Yeah.
But as far as ECT, I knew it existed. I knew it's been done for psychiatric purposes. And I'm so happy to hear that the University of Saskatchewan did this study and have now just said, fuck it, we'll just keep going.
Crank it out.
Yeah, and it's very unprecedented for a research institution to terminate a study early because it was successful.
It was just too successful.
It was the other way around where they said, we have to implement this. And I was never back at the hospital or around when they started doing ketamine-only therapy, which was pioneered at the U of S. I remember when I was doing ECT, they would ask a patient, are you on the study drug? No, I am. Are you on a study drug? Yes, I am. And the study drug, it was a double-blind study, and so they had a special man in a special coat come in and mix up those particular drugs. He didn't know what it was. Nurses, doctors, patients didn't know what it was, and it was just like a number in a computer system that they did. And they found that not only was ketamine effective as an adjunct to ECT, but simply ketamine therapy on its own had huge responses to major mood disorders, to the point where we might be able to really scale back the amount of ECT we do, and ketamine doesn't have the same cognitive effects as ECT. Of course, ECT came in to replace lobotomies, which were done up until like frighteningly recently, like the middle part of the last century.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes.
Into the... Gosh, I want to say into the 60s or 70s.
Easily, yeah.
Holy shit! You see, like
that late?
Yeah.
Yes.
Christ.
Well, like when I think of frontal lobotomies, I think of that movie From Hell about Jack the Ripper, where they cut out the front of her brain. I'm like, oh shit! Like that was back in like the Victorian times. Like you don't think of someone in like groovy bell bottoms and like a paisley shirt doing it to someone.
Ho yo, a frontal lobotomy. You stick in a fork and turn it around, a frontal lobotomy. Put it in the blender until it is tender, a frontal lobotomy. Ho yo, a frontal lobotomy.
Oh, that was catchy.
The two highest profile ones that I know of prefrontal lobotomies, Ethel Kennedy. JFK's sister.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Okay, I knew about that one.
And I didn't find this out until he released his book. I don't think anyone in the general public knew before he released his memoirs. But
so that's mid-60s.
That was mid-60s. Well,
let's Google it.
Yeah, pulling up almighty Google.
I am.
But the other one is Lloyd Robertson's mom.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Lloyd Robertson is like a super newsy news guy.
For those unaware, he was Canada's Walter Cronkite for the better part of the late 20th century, and up until when did he retire, Leon?
03?
I know later than that, because I was at that
network. I said Sandy Ronaldo was going to take over. You said no, she's too old, and then Lisa LaFlamme came in.
Right.
I like Lisa LaFlamme.
Late 2000s.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I want to say 2009. Yeah.
I want to move on to the cognitive.
Wait.
Hold on.
In November 1941. Oh no, that's Rosemary Kennedy.
Sorry. Yes, not Ethel.
Yeah, Rosemary Kennedy.
Rosemary.
So it was in 1941 when she was 23. They gave her a lobotomy.
Right.
Jesus.
Okay, so cognitive impairment as a result of electroconvulsive therapy. This can be as a one-off, or it can be cumulative over many treatments. Okay, so the effects on memory There are two types of memory loss associated with electroconvulsive therapy and all kinds of like pharmaceuticals and head injuries. Two types of memory. There's retrograde memory loss and anti-retrograde memory loss.
Okay.
So retrograde memory loss is like I raped someone and then I had an ECT the next morning, and after that I don't remember having raped someone the night before.
Okay.
So it
like before
it kills
the
my
action
memories
happened.
for a certain period of time. Could be an hour, could be a day. I found with ECT, like I wouldn't remember having woken up the next morning, and that would be gone. But then I would have an immediate memory of my eyes closing as I rolled back into the void. Whereas I find with benzodiazepines like Ativan, they have retrograde memory loss. So, for example, at my second wedding, I took a lot of Ativan in the morning, and I don't remember the rehearsal the night before.
I was there.
I know you were. I took Ativan during the service, and I don't remember the service.
Oh, wow.
And
I was also there.
took Ativan after it, and unfortunately, I remember certain disgusting parts of the honeymoon or the wedding night. But the wedding basically exists in about 5 seconds of clips of memory in my head.
Jesus.
Your second wedding was pretty fun.
It was fun for a lot of people.
My son was a party baby.
Yeah, it was good. Wedding number 3 is going to be great.
Oh, I'm so excited.
Because, me and Mrs. Leon Filger are tying the knot next year.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Woohoo.
And as a marriage commissioner, guess who gets to marry them?
Yeah, Sage.
That's
Sage
me.
is doing it.
And I'm DJing.
Oh,
Brandon's
really?
DJing.
Fuck yeah.
And
MCing. Oh, yes.
Oh my God. Okay, that's fun.
Yeah.
And I'll be the guy that gets too drunk and makes a speech.
Hey, that'll be me too.
And I think I will be standing up there next to Leon too, which will be fantastic.
Oh, yes.
You'll be up there with me.
Yes,
Okay, so
Sorry.
andro-retrograde amnesia is amnesia that affects only the procedure itself, so you don't remember that,
Oh.
and a tiny bit afterwards. So meds like Versed, like if you're getting a scope, it's called conscious sedation, and you just don't remember it later.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's that antero-retrograde.
That's like
memory
what they
loss.
gave my son when he was 2. He put his tooth through his lip, and we had to get him little baby stitches.
Mm-hmm.
So they gave him, like, they called it baby Valium, and they said that he wouldn't remember anything about the procedure so that he wouldn't be scared of doctors.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Okay.
So are you aware? Are you like aware and acting normal during the drug effects, and you just don't remember it?
That's correct. It is very much conscious sedation. So you're sedated, and the thing is, it's not that you experienced it and forgot it. It's that the part of your brain that's supposed to create memories got turned off. So it happens with me with Ativan. So, for example, like not remembering what I did yesterday. It's not that I forgot what I did yesterday. It's that no one hit record on the tape.
Right.
Yesterday.
That part of your brain was
so
just
there's nothing to watch. I
pause.
plug the VHS into the machine and hit play, and there's nothing there but static. Because last night when I was doing that stuff, no one hit record.
Interesting.
Oh, geez.
Is a good analogy for how retrograde amnesia works.
Interesting.
Yeah. So I wanted to say now, like, ECT can be a wonderful thing. It's a beacon of hope for so many people. The best thing you occultists can do is talk about it a little bit, and say, hey, like, we've got a podcast that you should listen to where a guy who's actually done it and has a lot of friends who have done it talks about the fact that, yeah, the memory effects are shitty. Before I did ECT, my IQ was 148. It was in the 99.5th percentile. It's since ECT dropped to the 70th percentile, which sucks because it robbed me of a good deal of my identity, because me being super smart was always the one thing I was good at. Well, statistically, no. I still kept the big words. That's the problem. my diction is still intelligent. But at the same time, like I had said in the dramatic reading, there's that pocket in the back of your brain where the depression exists, and it gets a little more empty with each treatment. And as it does, the pocket itself shrinks, which makes it harder for that depression to get back in when it's done.
Good.
And I guess out of the metaphor, is that just severing the brain connections that make depression happen?
We're not entirely sure how it works. The idea is that there's a constant flow of information between certain parts of the brain, and if they say there's effector A and receptors A and B. Receptor A is depression, receptor B is happiness. Receptor A, for whatever reason, has got a bigger pull. So when shit leaves effector A, it gets sucked toward effector B, effector A, and effector B gets none. And the idea is that the ECT knocks the extra gravity off of receptor A, so that
And it
the
lets
stuff
some
that's
of the
coming
stuff to go into the happier side.
happier side.
Restores the equilibrium.
Restores the equilibrium.
Interesting.
Exactly like that. Electrolytic defibrillation for the heart is the same thing. It restores a normal rhythm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really glad that you are slightly dumber and alive and happy
you.
than super smart and dead.
Wonderful. As we close, are there any comments, questions, queries, concerns, statements, or outbursts about electroconvulsive therapy?
I think, Leon, you've done a tremendous service educating not only the three of us, but I think many people who will be listening to this, who are listening to this, are going to have a better understanding. And one of my big things in my mental health advocacy is just breaking the stigma, and having conversations like this is how we do that.
Exactly.
So thank you.
Yeah, you're more than welcome. And yeah, geez, guys, talk about it. It's the scariest parts of, like, a lot of people are good at talking about depression and anxiety now.
Well, that's like what we have. Like they're like whatever things.
Whatever things, but talking about ECT, even
That's
like
intense.
talking about lithium, that shit is intense.
Yeah.
We got to talk about that too. And so I think it's important for people like me to actually get out and talk about it and say, yeah, like I can't remember. Don't bother telling me your name, because I promise I won't remember it. But guess what? I don't feel like killing myself today.
Yeah, and fuck yeah.
That's how I see it.
Yeah.
Better than nothing. It's like being really, really fucking horny on your deathbed, but the only person you can fuck is someone with genital herpes.
Yeah.
So you fuck them. You have genital herpes, but you're going to die anyway. So, I mean, yeah, you have genital herpes, but you still got to have sex before you died.
Yeah. Still counts.
That's fair.
Still counts. Right. And in just a moment, we're going to tack on our sexy questions.
Thank you.
There we go.
Sexy questions.
All right, this is 3 Sexy Questions. I'm Leon Filger. Okay, ready, occultists? I have some very exciting news, because this is after the 2nd of April. Mrs. Leon Filger and I are having a baby. Hey,
I'm its auntie.
Yes. So in recognition of Mrs. Leon Filger's pregnancy, we're going to have 3 sexy pregnancy questions.
I love you, Mrs. Leon.
Oh, goody.
Yeah, everyone loves Mrs. Leon.
There's like, what's not to love? It's amazing.
She's fantastic.
Yes.
Yeah, she made a baby, so that's something.
Yeah.
Which proves we had sex.
Leon is not dying a virgin.
No. No, I'm not. Okay, so question, and this is coming at you, Sage, being the only one in the room with experience in this.
Okay.
Sex post-pregnancy versus during pregnancy versus pre-pregnancy. When is it the best?
When I was pregnant, holy shit.
Why?
I was so horny.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you have like hormones.
Yeah, like I was like rushing full of hormones, and it was intense.
Okay, we'll say first trimester. Were you, like, how was your morning sickness?
I did not have any morning sickness.
Oh,
lucky
I know.
you.
Nothing. Nothing. I had the easiest pregnancy. The most terrible labor and delivery.
Send your hate mail to Sage.
So first and second trimester were easy sex then?
Yeah.
And then third trimester when you were bigger,
Still easy sex.
Still easy sex.
Yeah, just on top.
And then how long after the delivery were you back on it?
It was a long time because,
yeah.
TMI, I tore all the way from my V to my A.
It happens.
Yeah, I was like sitting on a donut for like 6 months. I did not want to be touched.
It's super common.
It was awful. My mental health, like I had crazy postpartum anxiety and depression on top of my like regular anxiety and depression. And it really hurt.
And then your taint was just also just destroyed.
Well, yeah, it was like they had to literally sew me back together. So I did not have sex for a while after that. Like I think it was probably about 7, 8, 9 months after that.
Question, I mean, this is a fair question, I think, because we're all wondering it.
Yeah.
There was no sex for 6 or 7, 8 months. Did Mr. Sage Murray still get some?
Yeah, he still got some.
And is that fair? Did you feel?
I couldn't. I didn't want to be touched. And also, I was breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So, like, having a baby sucking on your boob for like hours at a time, like I did not want to be touched. So I did what I could. Like poor Mr. Sage Murray probably suffered a little bit. I love you, but like I couldn't.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
It hurt, and I didn't want to deal with it, and it was just.
Because I worry about that. It's not like, is pregnant sex good or bad?
Pregnant sex is the best.
And can induce labor in the third trimester.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know. That's
cool.
What we want.
It can.
No. The pregnancy diagnosis, is that what you call it? A diagnosis?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Falling pregnant.
Was scary because like we enjoy a very healthy sex life, and I was concerned that this might potentially get in the way. Obviously, like, more concerned that I have a healthy child and everything turn out well, but at the same time, like, I like sex with Mrs. Leon Filger, and I don't want that to get anything get in the way of that.
Right. Pregnancy won't.
So pregnancy won't. It's just after.
For me, after it definitely did. Just because I was recovering from being literally stitched back together. Like, everything hurt. Even when, like, the first time we had sex after the pregnancy, like, I bled. Sorry, TMI listeners. But, you know, it gets back to being fine, and it's back to usual now. Like, it's fine. It ends up being fine, but it's just for that first little while after pushing an entire life out of your vagina and having it tear open.
Yeah, that's
you
fair.
just like you're just not into it.
You sound like you had an especially rough recovery.
It was awful. Yeah. I had to sit on a donut for 6 months because I could not, or like sit on the side in the car.
Yeah. So Ood, on the Facebook chat we had going, I had said that I was going to do 3 sexy questions on pregnancy.
That wasn't a sexy question. That was a gross question.
That was not a. It was kind of started out sexy.
It did start out sexy. Pregnant sex is good.
Okay.
After is bad.
when we first found out that Mrs. Leon Filger was great with a child, it didn't like. I didn't ever think for a minute that I would be unattracted to her. That never crossed my mind. But as she's like starting to show, I'm like, my attraction to her has had an element added to it where I don't know if you can call it a fetish, but something about her pregnant body is just really doing it for me in a like carnal animalistic way. Is that common, or is there something weird? Because I know there's plenty of like pregos porn, which has never done anything for me. I've seen the odd one, and
it's because you love her and she's full of your child.
I think so.
Yeah, like that's hot. Like you did that.
It's popular enough that it shows up in traditional porn, like certain studios or certain. Like, if one of their stars gets pregnant, it's common enough that they'll put her in a scene without making it specific to her pregnancy. So I think that's a sign of how common it is. And I don't know. I think it's... Like, of course, there's people that won't like it. But I think it's a very common thing.
It's so beautiful and alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it comes down to it's psychological just as much as it is physical, if not more so.
Right.
And exactly what Sage said. She's carrying your child. You know this in your brain. Something, there's a gear turning inside your brain.
Well, you change when you're a dad. Like, talk to Mr. Sage Murray, because like his brain changed.
Well, there's also the benefit of like, well, can I get her pregnant now?
Yeah, it's true.
So you really don't have to worry about precautions now.
You can't get double pregnant.
You know, you can't. Well, you can, but it's incredibly hard and fatal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jesus. I don't know. I think it's like you said, a very primal thing. I think there's a feedback loop in your mind happening, knowing that you're increasing your fitness. You know, you're doing what evolution likes, and I think there's a certain feedback loop in all animals' minds that release a bit of happy chemicals when that happens.
All right. Are we
yes.
Ready for question number 3? And this is the dicey one, and I didn't know if I wanted to put it in, but I'm doing it anyway.
I'm ready.
So, and I'm not going to. I'm asking for a friend. I really mean it. I'm asking for a friend. So, like, this friend quite enjoys putting his wife's nipples in his mouth as part of their sex act. Like, sucking on nipples is a big thing for both her and for him. It's one of the things that they do, part of their foreplay. Yeah. That's how they get each other wound up. She starts lactating. Do you keep doing it?
I've tried my own breast milk. It's delicious.
Yes, but has in a sexual context with your husband.
No, he was not into that.
You cannot steal the baby's food. Yeah. That is for the baby.
But my friend wants it so bad.
The image in my head is the episode of Friends where Ross refuses to try the breast milk, and then they all end up trying it in the end. But.
Yeah. It's not a fear of breast milk for me. It's that, like, for my friend, I just don't like it. It's such from one side, even from a non-sexual standpoint, it's a comforting thing to do. Like, it makes me feel better, and under the duvet, it's a good way to get things started. Cause she's sensitive, I'm sensitive. It's a good time. Like, I love it. Both love it. But that's what I'm most worried about with baby is, like, do I have to stop doing that because she's lactating?
If she's into it, then cool. Like, Mr. Sage Murray wasn't into it,
right?
Yeah.
And also, like, with let down, like, I squirted him a few times too,
which is fine.
But like, if you're into it, then like, by all means, have at her.
So you're not you're not a bad person or a deviant for being okay with that.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, what do you think, Ood?
I think it's perfectly acceptable. Like anything that's boob adjacent, I'm gonna generally be for. Like, really, when it comes down to it, like people enjoy boobs and people enjoy doing things with them, and interacting with one that has milk coming out of it is just like another aspect, another shade that you can add to your sexual experience.
Right. And if you're into it, then cool. And if you're not, then also cool. Like, whatever. Like, you'll find other stuff to do.
Bartlett, what do you think?
It is to each their own. I can't say I've been in this situation, so I can't give a personal aspect on it. But to each their own. And as far as I know you were joking with us that it's the baby's food. You can't say it. She's going to keep reproducing for that.
Well,
supply and demand.
You're not sucking her dry. It's just like a little here and there.
No, it's supply and demand. So if you do suck it, she'll just make even more. That's how your body works.
Well,
yeah.
That's good to know.
It is good to know.
Mrs. Leon Felger is going to listen to this too.
Do you
have her call me? I'll give her all the boob stuff.
I think I. Let me guess where your anxiety is coming from. Are you kind of worried that it's kind of a quasi, like a cross between the sexual aspect and the natural aspect?
Yes, like, am I a baby or am I the lover? As soon as milk comes out, that's called into question. And for me, that's not an issue at all. I never, because I'm a grown man, I'm not a baby. That milk is not nutrition for me. That nipple is sexy for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's all body fluids, baby.
Yeah. Just the fact there's milk coming out of it is neither here nor there to me.
Okay, well, cool then.
Societal judgment.
Off you go.
Yeah,
right.
And I think the same act can be sexy or unsexy in different contexts. Like when if you got a spanking as a child, that was non-sexual. That was a negative experience. But as an adult, it can be enjoyable.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's potentially go for it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say go for it if you're both into it. Like
Yeah.
if she's not into it and you're into it, like, don't push it.
Of course, it comes down to consent.
Yeah. Well, we've had this conversation. Like, consent is key.
We've had a lot of consent conversations.
Yeah.
Green light for me.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. That's the end of 3 Sexy Questions.
We love you.
For Occultae Veritatis podcast, I'm your host, Leon Filger. In studio with me,
Sage Murray.
Ood Gallifrey.
And our special guest,
Bartlett.
See everyone in a week from now, next Sunday.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thanks for coming in, Bartlett.
Thank you.
All right. Cheers. Peace and love.
Bye-bye. And our palate cleanser for this episode is written by our very own Leon Filger with his song How Many Millions, co-written by a schizophrenic ex-resident of his. He wrote down what they said over a few years, and he stitched together into a song. Make sure to join me after the palate cleanser for introducing a few more patrons into our occultist family on Patreon and some other goodies. See you then.
Does it take to save the day? How many millions does it take to stop the rain? How many millions does it take to end her pain? For fucking one. For fucking one. For fucking one. And how many millions does it take to eat a cake? How many millions does it take to drain a lake? How many millions does it take to end her pain? For fucking one. For fucking one. For fucking 4 fucking 1. 4 fucking 1. 4 fucking 1. 4 fucking 1.
Alrighty, people, that was definitely an interesting foray into the things that a schizophrenic mind can come up with, and very lovingly stitched together by our very own Leon Filger. Hope you enjoyed it. To start off our after show, we have a brand new patron. Actually, we have 2 new patrons. The first one is Jessica Jurgen, and I'm really sorry if I said your last name incorrectly, but I just feel the urge to say it Jurgen, because that sounds really nice coming out of my mouth, actually. It kind of reminds me of Kjorbarn and Brigitte and some other Overwatch characters. But yeah, thank you, Jessica, for your pledge of $5. We will use it to the best of our ability, and you know that for sure because Sage is in charge of the finances, and not Leon or myself.
Beer.
Yeah, so this week, drinks are on Jessica, and we thank Jessica very much for that. A $1 donation, and by the way, we have a $5 minimum on our Patreon, but it isn't a real minimum. If you want to go on there and donate any amount, really, you can still have access to everything. So if you can't quite make that $5 a month and you want to go in and get that $1 a month, you'll still have access to all the Patreon posts we put on there. So if you like the sound of that, just, donate whatever you want. $5 is not a real minimum. You can donate whatever you can afford, and we will appreciate it. So our $1 a month donation is from Your Morning After podcast. Now, when we were a fledgling podcast, I did this a few times. I went to some podcasts that I really liked and respected, and I donated to their Patreon and got a shout out. And it looks like Your Morning After is looking for a little bit of attention as they're a brand new baby podcast. So thank you very much for your donation. Your Morning After of $1 a month, it will go to somewhere nice. It'll be able to buy us a drink. Yeah, so the Your Morning After podcast and the lovely people behind it just bought our next round of drinks for What's Your Poison. So we thank you very much for their donation. The other good thing is, with Your Morning After coming in, we are officially at 20 patrons on the Patreon. And the reward tier there is we will put 2 things into the Black Archive a month instead of 1. And that'll be coming right up. We have 2 things in the docket right now. Me and Sage reading My Immortal, which is a horrible Harry Potter fan fiction. That'll be coming up, and also another one coming up. So the number 2 for April will be us exploring the Total Bridge to Freedom. So the little guide document behind all Scientology practices and therapy. So we're going to be looking at what superpowers you get at each level to the bridge to total freedom and all that. And yeah, those are the 2 things coming in April, and there's going to be more and more things coming up. Yeah, that's about it. Welcoming 2 patrons in, and we reached a goal on Patreon. You know, this little podcast is growing all the time. Every month we break records for what we downloaded and the people we reached and the feedback from fans, and honestly, seeing this community grow on this level and seeing the response we get from people on Twitter and seeing the comments we get from people on Instagram and seeing people that I never would have met reach out and appreciate the product that the 3 of us are putting out is honestly very nice. And yeah, thank you very much for taking part of your day to tune in, and we'll see you next Sunday with a brand new episode. Hope you enjoy.